My name is Matt Day, and this is my lockdown session for ILFORD Photo. I'm a photographer here in Chillicothe, Ohio. I shoot a lot of weddings, families, engagements, that kind of thing, but the main focus now is my YouTube channel and just shooting personal work. About 6 years ago, I started this YouTube channel to just talk about shooting film and sharing my experiences, and somehow it has just evolved into my full-time job now, so I am very thankful. Outside of photography, I have an incredible family with an amazing wife and 2 kids. It's really hard for me to pick favorite photos, so what I'm going to share now is just my favorite photo today. It could very well be something completely different next week, but right now it's this photo that I shot of my son Elliot on our bed. We've obviously been spending a ton of time at home, and this was the end of a day. He was just sitting on our bed, the sun was coming into our room and just kind of glowing, just bouncing off of the walls and everything, and it was just this really simple, quiet kind of moment, which isn't always the case when it comes to my 3-year-old son. And I was just happy with the composition of the photo, the fact that I was able to sneak myself into the frame in the background there using the mirror. It's just one of my favorite photos for how simple and quiet it is. So I actually got my first camera when I was 13, and it was this little Kodak Easy Share point and shoot camera, and it was given to me by my aunt and uncle. And they gave it to me, and I immediately fell in love with photography, and I kind of got started using that camera. And once I realized how much I loved it, I wanted to really explore photography and just gain a better understanding of it. I wanted to have more control. I remembered using my mom's Pentax whenever I was a kid and being able to manually focus the lens, and that was really all I knew. I didn't have a teacher or a mentor or anything. So I asked her what kind of camera it was, and she just said it was a 35mm camera. So I just jumped on eBay and found that, and as a kid, $50 was pretty much all I had to my name just from doing errands and chores and stuff like that. So I spent the $50 on a Minolta XGM and a 50mm f1.4 lens and just hit the ground running. I didn't know what aperture, shutter speed, film speed, any of that was. It was just a lot of trial and error, going to my local pharmacy and dropping off film and picking it up an hour later and seeing basically nothing that turned out right on the film, and yeah, just really a lot of trial and error. I think my biggest influence would just be skate magazines. Around the time I got my first camera, I also got my first skateboard, and those two things I immediately fell in love with both of them, and they really just felt like they went hand in hand together. And so naturally I just picked up a bunch of skate magazines, and really all of the skate magazines kind of contributed to that early influence, I think. Magazines like Thrasher, Skateboarder Magazine, the Skateboard Mag, there were a lot back in the day. And it was just a big mix of different skate photographers and different styles too. It wasn't just the actual skateboarding tricks that they were shooting, but in between the tricks and going on trips, and that kind of documentary style was definitely a big influence. And there were a lot of skate photographers that contributed to that. Guys like Mike Blayback, Joe Brook, Mike O'Mealy, Mike Burnett, the list just goes on and on basically, but really those skateboarding magazines definitely shaped how I shoot and the kind of style that I developed early on. This doesn't necessarily apply to photography, although I apply it to photography all the time, and I wish I had heard it sooner, and that's to never hold on to criticism from somebody that you wouldn't go to for feedback. In this day and age with social media, especially platforms like YouTube, comments come in 24/7, some positive and some negative, and even if the ratio is like for every 100 positive comments you get 1 negative one, you always hear the negative comment the loudest. So it's really easy for that to get into your head, but I've learned over time, slowly, to just get better about handling that. So the first 30 days of this whole kind of lockdown period, I was focused on making a little publication called Social Distancing. So I wanted to basically give myself a challenge of creating something like this in 30 days. So in 30 days time, I had to shoot, get everything developed and scanned and lay everything out, and then release a publication for people to order, and all of that was going to raise funds for our local food banks. I didn't tell anybody about the project, I didn't share any photos until the actual publication was ready, and it's been out for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now, and the response has been really, really great, and it's probably my favorite project I've ever done to date. If you've always wanted to try something within photography, or even if it's not actually out shooting, even if it's just editing or sequencing things and pairing images together, there are so many different things you can be working on just in the world of photography at any given time. And if you're able to right now while in lockdown, definitely take this time to do it. It's so easy to push things off and say, yeah, I want to work on that, I'll get to it later, especially if you have a family. I know how that goes firsthand. That was kind of why I gave myself a challenge of making something in 30 days, because if I didn't give myself a time constraint, I knew that I wouldn't actually make time for it. I would just keep pushing it off because life. So take this time to experiment and try different things if you've been wanting to. The first place we'll be going once this is all over is probably just to visit more family that we haven't been able to see and that our kids haven't been able to see. My mom, my wife's parents, they haven't been able to physically see them in person in, I think a couple of months now. I mean, it's crazy. We have to video chat every night, and that's the kind of stuff that I like to shoot anyway. It's just my daily, regular life with my family and friends. So it'll probably just be visiting family, and I will definitely be taking my camera. I'll be taking my M6 and a 35mm Summicron and a lot of HP5. My main goal moving forward is to just keep focusing on self-publishing. I've done self-publishing in the past with different projects, and it's always been fun and it's been a good experience, but I've kind of blocked myself from doing it for the last couple of years because again, with life getting in the way, and not getting in the way, but it's hard to balance everything, and whenever I'm working on a project, I want to give it as much focus and attention that I can, and I have tons of photos over the years that I've never done anything with that would make a nice little publication. I can just kind of gather everything and release it, and I also have other projects in mind that I haven't started shooting for yet, but now just going through this whole experience and releasing something completely new without sharing any of the photos beforehand, it's really lit a fire under me, and that's what I want to focus on moving forward. It's funny, you hear film photographers say that they love shooting film because it slows them down. That's sort of like one of the biggest film photography tropes out there. But this whole situation has really made me slow down in a lot of ways. Just spending a lot more time at home. I mean, my wife and I, we're homebodies. We spend most of our time at home anyway, but we do like to take the kids out of the house and go do things together and go on hikes and everything, which luckily we've still been able to do in, secluded areas where there aren't any other people around. But even just turning my work mind off while I'm at home, that's always been sort of a challenge for me. Moving my office into a place like this where it's not attached to our house, that's definitely made a big difference, but still I'm always thinking about photos I want to shoot, videos I want to make, emails I need to respond to. It's never ending, but this whole situation has really made me disconnect more than I normally would, and it's been really refreshing. So I would like to see everybody just work at a little bit slower pace and realize that work isn't always the most important thing. My buddy Dom, he's a great photographer. I love seeing what he's shooting. I love his composition. He's always got a great eye for layering things. Laura Partain, she's definitely one of my favorites. Shoots a lot of the country music scene around Nashville, real country music, which I'm a big fan of. I always love seeing Laura's work. And Kyle Miles. Kyle's been a friend for a long time, but I always love seeing new work from him. 3 favorite YouTube channels. This one is kind of tough. I feel like it would be cheating for me to mention 3 of my close friends who I already do a lot of videos with and collaborations with. Willem, Joe, and Corey. I'm gonna sneak those in there, but we're gonna talk about 3 other channels today. Sorry guys, I just feel like that would be kind of a cop-out. Number 1, I gotta say Kyle McDougall. Not only is it just enjoyable to watch and listen to him as he talks, he's very articulate and clear and concise with what he says, much better than someone like yours truly. But the production quality for his videos, he has a video background, so it definitely shows. The videos are always super polished and the work that he shoots is great. I love Kyle's channel, so he's at the top of my list. Zach Parks, he's another one who has recently started his channel and just hit the ground running with new videos, it seems like every other day. Does a lot of different stuff in regards to film photography, videos on developing, shooting, everything you can think of. He also does the film developing for his local camera shop as well, so Zach knows what he's talking about. Really good dude and great channel, so Zach Parks is the next one. And last but not least, I'm gonna go with my friend Benj Heish. He's an incredibly talented wedding photographer, but he's also started started a YouTube channel where he talks a lot about different film cameras, technique, editing. There are so many different things that he covers, but he does it all really, really well, so definitely check out Ben's channel. Favorite photo retailer is definitely Midwest Photo up in Columbus, Ohio. It's just an hour north of here, so it's basically my local shop. Great people up there. It's a great shop, and they have a serious love for film photography there. Plenty of film to choose from, but they also have an actual darkroom in-house as well, which is always great to see. So Midwest Photo in Columbus, Ohio, that is the spot. Favorite lab is the darkroom in San Clemente, California. I have been sending all of my film there for about a year and a half now. I used to develop and scan everything at home. I even had a darkroom at home, which I do definitely miss, but I've been sending everything to the darkroom in San Clemente for, again, over a year and a half now, and they always do an incredible job, and they are very passionate about the film photography community, which is another thing I love so much about them, because that's something I'm passionate about as well, and we've been able to do a lot of work together to really kind of foster that. So yeah, definitely check out the darkroom. Favorite film camera is this right here, the Leica M6. This has been with me every day for almost 7 years now. I wanted one for many, many years before that, but I could never talk myself into finally buying it, and once I did, this is actually my gift to myself when I quit smoking. I basically factored up the cost of cigarettes for 1 year, and it would cover the cost of the camera. So I bought this back in 2013 as a gift to myself when I quit smoking, and yeah, been shooting with it ever since. Always have to have some kind of pocket tool. I always have my Leatherman Wave with me anywhere I go. I have used it on just about anything you can think of. I was gifted a Polaroid SX70 by a family member. They found it in a bag that said Polaroid on it, but when they opened it up and found the camera itself, they didn't know what it was. They didn't know it was actually a camera. They thought it was some other kind of accessory just because it was in the Polaroid bag. But whenever they brought it to me, I just popped it open, and it kind of blew their mind because they had no idea that you could even open it. They didn't know what it was. So yeah, they found that at maybe an antique store or something for $10 and brought that to me years ago. And yeah, that's probably the coolest, I guess, piece of gear I've been gifted. If you've watched my channel, you already know this, but HP5, that's my favorite ILFORD film by far. I've shot God knows how many thousands of rolls of HP5 over the years, but it's just so reliable. It just works. It gives me exactly what I want out of my 35mm kind of daily documentary kind of work. I just love it. Although if I'm shooting medium format, I do tend to shoot ILFORD Delta 3200 and shoot it at 1600, so just overexposing it by a stop. That for me gives me the perfect amount of contrast and grain in my 120, because HP5, although it is incredible, sometimes it's too clean for me in 120. I want a little bit more of that grain, and if I push HP5 in medium format, I can get super clean results up to 6400 or probably even further. So I do like a little bit more grain, so Delta 3200 is kind of a staple for me in 120. As far as paper goes, whenever I had my darkroom at home, I was always printing on RC Multigrade 4 Pearl. I loved the finish of that paper, and I have many prints of my wife and I basically at the start of our relationship and early into our marriage. A lot of prints made on that paper, and I still like to flip through them from time to time. And favorite chemicals, I'm a big fan of ILFOTEC HC. That's what I always used when I developed at home, although now everything when I send it to the darkroom is developed in ILFOTEC DDX, which also looks great. Yeah, I don't know if I'm the kind of person to stockpile film. I'm going to nominate Andre Wagner. He is one of my favorite working photographers today, and he spends a lot of time in the darkroom, so I feel like this would be a really good fit for him, and I'd love to hear some of his questions. So hopefully, Andre, you're up next. But that's it for me. This has been my lockdown session for ILFORD Photo. So ILFORD, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it, and keep making great film. You can also send a box too if you want. It doesn't really matter, but you know, you're more than welcome to.